listened to the board chair, Yvonne Roebuck, as she talked for a few moments this morning in our welcome, and some of the things that she was relaying to us. I want to make sure that I underscore those things. Whether you're an undergraduate student or a graduate school student, I suggest that you use these workshops, these development periods, as a part of your resume. Because every organization, regardless of where you work now or where you will be working in the future, every organization is going to need somebody like you. They have people sometimes in management positions, sometimes they have people who are doing various things. But one of the critical things that's happening today is the concept of leadership. What do you do? How do you do certain things? How do you connect? I've been privileged to be able to do a number of things. I was on a conference call or webcam yesterday with about 367 financial executives from around the country and other parts of the world. They invited me to be the person talking about leadership. And I thought, okay, what do I know about finances, and what do I know about especially those executives? Some of them were chief financial officers, some of them were comptrollers for companies, some of them also were people who were vice presidents of finance, and then there were some in a few other categories as they responded to some of the things I pushed out to them in terms of questions. There's an engineering company in Pittsburgh that has 5,000 employees. I won't say what the name of the organization is at this point, but they contacted me about a month or so ago, and they want me to come and do what is called a lunch and learn. Well, I thought, what do I know about engineering? Now, I don't know everybody's major in the room. I do know at least one particular person who is an engineering student at the University of Pittsburgh. And I've talked to people who've been engineers and things like that, and I thought, what do I know about engineering? Well, they're not asking me to come because of what I know about engineering. They want me to come and talk about leadership. So certain things that you will be involved in today. I was on a conference call with Allegheny County Intermediate Unit yesterday. A young lady who was one of the supervisors heard me do something in a leadership series a few weeks ago here at Duquesne University. And her boss was with her, and then I wound up in this conference call yesterday, and they want me to come and do some things. What's the critical subject then? The critical subject is leadership. And sometimes we wind up in roles or positions and don't understand the real scope of the influence that we can have in other people's lives. So as we go through this process together, we're going to learn some things, we're going to explore some things together, and we're going to get into the idea of what happens in the area of leadership. Before we do all of that, I want to take you to some of the things then that have been mentioned. As we move through our day, we know this is the training for community service for the Community Service Project, at least one of the trainings. I'll be doing some lecturing, but yet I'll be asking for some interaction as we move through the day so that I'm not just a talking head up here, that we're able then to interact as we talk about leadership, as we talk about motivation, and especially self-motivation. The idea of the introduction to the Community Service Project, before we're finished with the end of the day, you'll see some of the things hopefully coming together in terms of wrapping your head around what the Chuck Cooper Foundation is about and the community service development part of the program. What I want you to do is think about these questions that are on the screen. I'll give you a moment just to look at them, because I'm going to basically have you talking to another person, someone next to you. You'll pair off. And with the notebook that is in front of you, you'll be able to get those questions answered. I want you to just jot some things down about, involve. Then what is a leader? What do leaders do? And what is a leader? That's your second question. And I'll give you a chance to respond as I begin to move down that particular road, as we begin to lay some foundation. If you want some background on why I asked that question, because, again, I've been a leadership professor for about almost 17 years now, teaching graduate level organizational leadership. And what happens so often is people somehow think that managers and leaders are the same, and they're not necessarily the same. That was a question pretty much I posed to those financial executives yesterday on our webcam, on our webinar. The idea of what is a leader. And the road we're going to go down is talking more about the leader, not as much about a person who is a manager. Someone said some time ago that managers manage things. Well, I'm not trying to get you to be a manager. I think wherever you're going to work and Certain positions that you'll be thrust into will lead in the area of whether you're a manager. But again, I say that leaders are people that are needed today. And I keep running into people who head organizations who are looking for leaders. So those are the two questions. Wealth just to oneself is not as valuable as we would think. It's when we learn how to disperse or distribute the wealth. And leadership is one of the critical ways that we can learn how to distribute wealth. Within our communities, within organizations that we become familiar with, committees that we sit on, boards that we will sit on. There are lots of ways that we can do leadership. There's a man by the name of John Maxwell. How many of you have heard of John Maxwell before? At least a few of you have. John Maxwell has pastored a church for a number of years on the West Coast, but for some particular time, he basically pastored thousands of people. He felt led to begin to write some books on leadership. What he wrote over the years in the numbers of books that he was able to publish not only helped people in ministry, but helped people in corporations. John Maxwell says this: "He who thinks he leads and no one follows is just taking a walk." I want you to think about that for a moment. He who thinks he leads and no one follows is just taking a walk. Sometimes we can think of ourselves as being leaders, but who's following us or who are we having impact? And I would tend to think that people are watching us more than we think they are. People are listening to us more than we think we are. But somehow we need to begin to direct that and somehow develop an energy and a competency base that will help us in our area of leadership. If you are really seriously thinking about leadership, then you need to seriously think about what you're doing and the impact that you're having upon other people. Now, I asked you to put forth some things on paper in terms of things that leaders do. If you'll just respond, and for the sake of our video, I'll repeat what do leaders do, in your opinion? Yes, ma'am.
They empower others.
They empower others. Someone else. Yes, ma'am.
They inspire, motivate, and facilitate.
So they empower, they inspire, they motivate. Someone else. Yes, ma'am. They speak freely and express their opinions. Okay, some of them do. Yes, sir.
They encourage those who they work with to do the best that they can.
They encourage the people with whom they work to do the best they can. I saw a hand over here, at least one hand. Yes, ma'am.
They think objectively and strategically using a long-term scope.
Oh, I love the responses that I'm hearing. You're going to make my day shorter. No, not actually. Because I think what's going to happen is you're going to get a chance to see. They're able to repeat that again.
Think objectively and strategically using a long-term scope.
They think objectively and strategically. One of the things I'm teaching now for a bunch of graduate school students is strategic planning or leadership and strategy. And the idea of strategic thinking links to strategic learning. So that if we teach people how to become strategic thinkers, we're not just in organizations talking about strategic planning anymore, because that process continues. I saw a hand to my far right down there. Yes?
They are passionate about what they're speaking.
Oh, passion. Oh, you're giving us great topics. Leaders ought to be people who are very passionate about what they do. When I sometimes speak in front of groups of people, and again, the audiences vary, one of the things I share with them is the passion that I have. And leaders ought to be able to reignite the passion and not become distracted in the workplace. So often I run into people, and I'm certain that some of you do too, who after some point they become burned out with what they do. And there are reasons why people become burned out. The job becomes laborious. They get sick and tired of going to work. Some of it has to do with one of the kinds of trainings I do dealing with toxicity in the workplace, where there are toxic behaviors that exist, and how do we approach rectifying those problems? What kinds of solutions? I think that when you're a leader, it's as you say. I mean, you basically need to become passionate, and you don't allow anybody to take that passion away from you. I've probably been working longer than anybody in this room, and yet I'm still passionate. And I still wake up oftentimes between 2 and 3, sometimes mostly between 3 and 3:30 in the morning. People say, why do you get up so early? Because I don't punch a clock. With the variety of things that I do, I love what I do. I love working, and it has to do in part by the word that I shared with you. And if you don't have that word written down somewhere, I want you to write it down, because somewhere in our trainings, we're going to talk about that. SERVE. the importance of becoming a servant leader, how we then are able to make sure that somebody else is getting something out of what we do, and at the same time, we're benefiting by it because we're going to change our mindset to really understand what's happening in the workplace. I saw at least one or two other hands. Yes, ma'am.
My concept was that a leader, though they're in a leadership position, still knows how to follow adequately.
A leader, though in a leadership position, knows how to follow adequately. It's important because you never get to the place where you're just a leader. And when I teach leadership and work with leaders like you, one of the things I indicate that the leader is not always the person in the front of the room. There may be somebody because of his or her expertise who rises to that particular thing. How many of you have ever heard of when we talk about transformational leadership or transforming? Those are two different concepts. Because we think of Nehemiah. I heard a few people talk earlier about your concern for church, your love for church, and your love for the Bible. Nehemiah in the Old Testament would be considered a transformational leader. And if you examine the scriptures about Nehemiah, you'll see that the things that he was able to do was not just for himself. They needed to build a wall. And what he was able to do was to encourage. What he was able to do was to inspire those who were helping him to build this wall so he transformed. But there's another concept that is not in where we're going today called transforming leadership. And what happens with transforming leadership is part of what we just heard a few moments ago on that definition of or concept of what leaders do. In transforming leadership, what happens is you're not just top down trying to lead an organization. Sometimes the leadership comes bottom up, that you allow each person, whether they're top in the organization in the hierarchical schedule or strata, or someone below can help the organization move to its next level. And it takes knowing how to lead, knowing how to follow. Any other people who want to share the idea of what things leaders do? Well, let's look at then the other question that I asked you. What are some of the qualities of a leader in your opinion? You've shared great answers in terms of what leaders do. Yes, sir.
The correct attitude at the right time.
The correct attitude. Sometimes I tell people we at times need an attitude adjustment. Sometimes things can happen, can provoke you, move you in the wrong direction. And the leader must have the correct attitude. But it doesn't come overnight. It is something that that leader must work with. And one of the things that we will begin to go through today and in our next sessions will hopefully expose us to the point where we can examine who we are, where we're going, so that we bring the best qualities to the table to SERVE, others. Any other people want to share? Yes, ma'am.
Gentleness and self-control.
Gentleness, self-control. Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna say a sense of like accountability and responsibility.
Accountability and responsibility. Some of you, again, probably work for organizations. Others of you will wind up in corporations, other types of businesses where you will begin to question at some point the levels of accountability. There's a particular man by the name of Patrick Lencioni. And Patrick Lencioni is known around the United States and probably some other parts of the world for one of the things that he's written. He's written several books, but one of them is called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And one of those 5 dysfunctions involves communication, but another one that Patrick Lencioni talks about is accountability. If I had time to talk about that, and maybe later in the day or in a future session, we can talk about that, because one of the things I teach at the graduate level is ethics, graduate business ethics, leadership and ethics. And you'll find, even in our country today, and some of you may have been exposed to, where people just aren't that ethical. You have to have your own moral compass within you to be able to be motivated to the level that nobody has to stand guard over you for you to do what you're supposed to do. Some of it goes back to what you said earlier, passion, becoming passionate. Anybody else that wants to share? Yes, ma'am.
Humility.
Humility, where can we find it? Humility goes back to the idea of self-discipline. If we have a true perspective of who we are, it should bring us to the point. I am humbled. And I don't flatter people. I am humbled to be in front of each of you today, to hear whether you're a graduate school student or you're a student finishing your undergraduate degree in a lot of disciplines, because I take it that seriously. I'm honored
to be with you today. I know some people who were introducing me earlier were talking about the expertise that I bring to the table, but you never lose sight of who you are as a person. My wife's mother is 93 years old. She's been an ardent Christian for many, many years, woman of prayer. One of the lessons that she taught me a long time ago, probably several decades ago, when my ego probably was really messed up at that point, she said, son, always be small in your own eyes. That's worth writing down. Always be small. It doesn't mean that you have a poor self-esteem, because if you know me, which most of you don't, I don't have any problems with self-confidence. I've been down that road where my confidence was eroding. I don't have any problems in the area of being arrogant, because my role is to serve other people, to help other people get to the level that theirs. And guess what? As you are becoming more equipped in the area of leadership, your role is also that of serving the people. Let me tell you an inside secret to that. If you're helping people, they will protect whatever it is you're doing. They will stand guard over the things in your life, in the workplace. If they really view you as a person that you have their best interests at heart, that you have their back, they will do whatever they have to do to work with you, even if they don't agree with you sometimes. Let me have at least one or two other comments. Yes, sir.
Lead by example.
A leader, one of the qualities is to be able to lead by example. And in America, we have a real struggle with that. Oftentimes in the political arena, but also in major corporations. I won't name the corporation, but just about 2 years ago, here in the city of Pittsburgh, one of the largest corporations that we have downtown Pittsburgh had some real problems in, not just in the area of something illegal taking place, but something immoral taking place. Something immoral. Where the president of the corporation wound up somehow connecting with a young lady who probably was about the age of one of his kids, and he began to promote her in the organization. Somehow she had access to things. The end of the story was she was married, he was married, and it ruined his job, probably making at least hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for this major corporation. Became a big thing on the news. He was not leading by example. See, when you become a leader, everything about you speaks to the very core of who you are as a leader. The discipline we should have, the humility that we should have. Folks, you have to look at life like some of us do. I look at life like it's a gift. It's a wonderful opportunity. And when you begin to approach it a certain way, doors begin to open as you continue to make yourself the best that you can be. I saw another hand to my left. Yes, ma'am.
Have the spirit of excellence.
Wow, having the spirit of excellence or a sense of mastery, that takes a while. My approach in undergraduate school was one thing, but when I got to graduate school, I really turned on the burners. And by the time I got into the doctoral program, finished my doctorate a long time ago by the time I was 30 years old. I was working 2 full-time jobs. My wife and I were having children at that particular time. But that time, I had moments of epiphany. I had eye-opening moments because as Mr. Cooper shared some of the statistics as he was talking about his dad, and back around 1976, 1975, that there was just a small percentage, less than 10% African Americans getting master's degrees. I was one of those African Americans right around 1977 who had his master's degree. My twin had his master's degree, and my mom had finished her PhD, and all 3 of us were at the same commencement service at the University of Pittsburgh. Now I have to say, Humble, I don't have any problems with humility. Back to your point, because I remember where I came from. If you always remember where you came from, and some of you have excelled already, your background was different than some of the things I had gone through academically early on. But somebody inspired me. Somebody said, a leader will inspire you. Somebody inspired me along the way. And what that did was that opened my eyes. So as I look back now, it keeps things in perspective that I've been given a gift. Whether it's my ability to speak and speak to people around the country through the media, or doors that open, humility is something that causes you to keep things in perspective. At least one more. Anybody else? Yes, sir. And then we'll go to her and we'll take a break. He says one of the qualities of a leader is as an organizer, the ability to organize. That takes a lot. And then one more.
The ability to command attention and respect that remains.
Wow. She said the ability to command respect and what else? And attention. We would call that charismatic leadership, having a sense of charisma. The only downfall to charismatic leadership is it's short term. It doesn't carry the long haul. At some point, you've got to be able to not just get people's attention, you've got to have some substance about you to keep people's attention. Most of us have probably seen people, they're good talkers. But see, talking is not enough. Somebody said a long time ago, talk is cheap. You have to at some point, and as a leader, you have to be able to demonstrate it. You have to be able to stand to the plate and hit that ball. You have to be able to hit that thing like Mr. Cooper did back in 1950, being the first African American drafted in the NBA by the Boston Celtics. At some point, you got to bring your A game. You have to be able to handle your business. Talk ends after some point. You've got to be able to stand. And what we are attempting to do with you from the Chuck Cooper Foundation is to bring again some of the tools, some of the things that will help you become even more competent than what you already are, outside of your specific areas of academic preparation, so that you'll realize that no matter where you land in a year or 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, that you emerge as a leader. And somebody will see that the leader in you is shining out and they'll want to connect with you. I'm amazed at the doors that are opening for me at this season of my life, but I am still humbled. And I come back to the idea of humility, because you cannot be narcissistic. It cannot be all about you. It's got to be about somebody else. And if we always keep other people in our purview, everything else that you will need in life will come to the table. And if it's dollars that you want, people will pay sometimes for what they think you know. This is what I used to tell my students many years ago when I taught at the community college. And I run into any number of them now, and especially when I taught philosophy. People will pay you for that. But you've got to have some substance and some quality that somehow captivates the attention of others. If you're able to do that, you're able then to emerge.